Hello, welcome back to part 3 of chapter 12 Sound. This is from the class 9 CBSE NCERT book. My name is Avantika. I hope you have seen the first two parts. We have already discussed a majority of the chapter in that. And this is the third part. So this will be the end of this chapter and we will go on to numericals and the questions given at the end of your chapter in part 4. Okay. If you haven't seen those parts, please go and watch them first before you come to this. Otherwise, you won't understand anything. And if you please keep your books open while you see this video, because only watching the video is not enough. You have to take notes, you have to jot down explanations and all those things. So a book or a notebook, whatever you like. So just keep your book open so that you can see what we are going. You can just read through whenever I'm presenting. Okay, so I'll proceed. This is what you have learned in part 2. I am just going to read through it, not going to explain it. The number of complete oscillations per unit time is called the frequency nu. Nu is equal to 1 upon t, where t is the time period. Difference in frequency is the pitch. Maximum displacement of a particle on either side is called amplitude. The speed v, frequency nu, and wavelength lambda of sound are related by the equation v is equal to lambda nu. The speed of sound depends primarily on the nature and the temperature of the transmitting medium. Sound properties such as pitch, loudness, and quality are determined by the corresponding wave properties, sound wave properties. Loudness is a physiological response of the ear to the intensity of the sound. The intensity is the amount of sound energy passing each second through unit area. The law of reflections of sound states that the directions in which sound is incident and reflected make equal angles with the normal to the reflecting surface at the point of incidence, and all three of them lie in the same plane. To hear a distinct sound, the time interval between the original sound and the reflected one must be at least 0.1 seconds. The persistence of sound in an auditorium as a result of repeated reflections of sound is called reverberation. Okay, so we come to the continuation of that. So what are the uses of multiple reflection of sound? We have seen that multiple reflection of sound can be a problem in big halls, like where reverberation takes place, where because of the echoes and because of the reverberation, it can be difficult. It can interfere with the actual sound that is being produced, right? That is why they use absorbing sound absorbing materials or fiber board and cushions and thick draperies, or the cushions of the seats. All of them are they absorb sound so as to prevent echo, right? And that is done in halls and stuff like that. So what are the uses of this? There have to be some uses of this, because we always find some use for this, for anything that happens in nature. So one of the uses is that megaphone, horns, musical instruments such as trumpets or shehnai are designed to send sound in a particular direction only, without spreading in all directions. Now what happens is, when you have a sound source like this, when you are speaking, sound goes in all directions possible. And what happens is, when it kind of gets diluted, because if you're just hearing it from here, you will just have a few waves coming into your ear. What about the rest of the waves that go here and there? They get lost. They don't get lost, they also move. Of course there's an energy, but if there's nobody who's listening here, then it's a waste of that energy. So what can you do? You can make it so that these waves that are going here and there are reflected by a tube. Like if there's a tube like this, right, the sound waves will then get reflected. Okay, so instead of going here and there helter and skelter, they will just keep moving like this. They will keep getting reflected and they will finally reach the position that has to be reached, right? So they will not escape from any other place. So that leads to an amplification of sound. It is not exactly that the sound is uh, uh, you are not magnifying that sound. You're just making sure that all the energy that is being produced by that sound goes into a specific direction. A very simple thing you can do is, when you're cupping your uh, mouth like this before you, if you're like shouting out to a friend or so, why do you do that? You're doing that because your friend is like in that direction. Okay, and if you speak like this, if you shout like this, then the sound is going everywhere. You don't want that. So you cup your mouth like this, और उसके बाद आप किसी को चीख मारते हो या किसी को आप बुलाते हो, so you do like this, you know, in the direction of the person. This is what you normally do as in instinctively, you don't have to think about it. So that is the same principle that we use in megaphones and shehnais and trumpets. So they all have a tube which is followed by a conical opening. What does the conical opening do? This is the tube, so all of the sound is being, right, this is the source. It goes like this, some of it gets reflected like this, and at the conical opening it starts moving in these directions. So the few people who need to hear it will hear it. Okay, so that is what happens. All right, so this, it guides most of the sound waves in the forward direction. Okay, most of the sound waves give, of course if there's a gap here then thoda sa idhar udhar chala jayega, but most of them are reflected from the surface of the tube, and then they are guided in the same direction, so that the sound is clearer and more amplified. Okay, what does amplification mean? To increase the loudness or the intensity of the sound. Okay, so this is a megaphone, this is a horn, like ये you might see this in some of the auto rickshaws, कभी novelty के लिए लगाते हैं pum 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 करते हुए, but nowadays you don't see these things much. But of course you have this, so this is the same principle that is used in trumpets and shehnais also. There's also another thing is stethoscope. What is stethoscope? When you go to a doctor, the doctor is wearing something on his neck, like, okay, so it looks something like this. There has, it has these two that they put in their ear, then this is a tube that, and this is a small pad that they put on your chest or your lungs to hear your heartbeat, to hear the lungs, and they, especially if you have a cough or something, they tell you to breathe deeply, so they listen to the different sound reflections and the way the sound is passing through your lungs and the heart, especially your lungs when you're coughing, and then they can figure out if you have like a congestion or something. So that is a stethoscope. It has the same principle, that the sound enters this, it gets directly goes in from this tube, and then they can hear it from the ear. Otherwise heartbeats and all are very light. Now you cannot hear somebody's heartbeat unless you go really close and you keep your ear on the heart. But other than that, if you really want to hear the heartbeat properly, you need to be able to magnify it, or amplify it, use all the energy, all the energy that is being given out by the heart for its, while it's beating, the sound energy of the heartbeat, and use it to hear it, instead of losing it to the environment. Okay, so that is the use of a stethoscope. So the sound of heartbeat reaches the ear by multiple reflections. Okay, so this is a very funny photo of the doctor listening to a child's heart. You can't really see the stethoscope, but the stethoscope is like this, and he's listening to the heartbeat. Okay, again, ceilings of concert, conference, and cinema halls are curved, right? We have talked about reverberations ki if you want to reduce that, agar aisa ho, तो they all get reflected from this area and idhar udhar jate hain. But at the same time, these conference halls also have a curved surface. What does that do? Of course, some of the sound is absorbed to prevent reverberation, too much reverberation, but by by curving that, what you will do is, this is a source, by curving you are ensuring that the sound reaches all parts of the, without reverberating too much, without having multiple echoes, they reach every part of the conference hall, because angle of incidence is equal to angle of reflection, so you will see that they reach all parts of the conference hall. Okay, that is why it is curved. A curved soundboard may be placed behind the stage also. If there's a stage, if you're standing in the stage and this is your audience, so this soundboard may also be slightly curved, so that any sound that goes here is reflected to the audience. Okay, so this is an example. This is a curved ceiling of a conference hall. The conference hall, this is the speaker, it goes to every single row, every single part of the room. And soundboard in a big hall, so this is the source of sound. As I said, it will get reflected and go to the audience. Okay. Why are the ceilings of a concert hall curved? The ceilings of concert halls are curved in order for the sound to reflect from the ceiling and go to every part of the hall, right? In order for the sound to reach every corner of the hall properly, the ceiling of the concert hall is curved, and it is always curved. It is not curved without any calculations. I mean, they have proper calculations when they are making such concert halls and stuff, so as to ensure that actual angle of it doesn't get lost. ऐसा ना हो कि ऐसे curve कर दिया तो this sound is reaching there, is going somewhere here like this, and then nobody can hear it because it's getting lost somewhere or it is getting reflected again. No, what they do is they make proper calculations as to where the stage is going to be, as to where the speaker is going to be, and then they it's properly calculated and they make it so that the angle of when it gets reflected, it goes to every corner of the hall. Okay. So range of hearing. What is the range of hearing? Range of hearing is how much we can hear. So we can hear only a certain frequency. We can't hear every single sound because whatever you hear in around you is not the entire sound that is actually existing. There's a lot of sound energy that you cannot hear. That is just not audible to your ears because your ears are sensitive only to a certain range of frequencies. That audible range is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Okay, 1000 kilo means 1000, so 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz. So that is the maximum range, that is the range of your ears. Okay, other than that उसके ऊपर जो भी होता है या उसके नीचे जो भी होता है, you can't hear it. So just imagine how much sound energy there is. If you already hear so much sound energy, if you can already hear so many different sounds and noises around you, imagine how many there are that you cannot hear, right? So there's a lot of I will talk about infrasounds and ultrasounds. There's a lot of sounds above this range and below this range that you cannot hear. But children, for example, under 5, small children, or some animals, or if somebody has really good hearing, they can hear up to 25 kilohertz. Now there's an example of this a few years ago. This is not children under 5, but even when I was like a teenager or something, I was sitting and there was a mobile that was charging somewhere, right? And my brother and I, we kept talking about, अरे यहाँ से तो कुछ आवाज आ रहा है, कुछ आवाज आ रहा है. There was a very high frequency sound that was coming from the charger, and I told my parents, oh listen, there's some sound coming, are you sure the charger is okay? And they said, we can't hear anything, we really can't hear anything. And my brother and I are looking at each other perplexed कि इनको सुनाई क्यों नहीं दे रहा. So this actually happens, your hearing goes down as you age. Okay, so uh, small children can hear even more high pitched sounds than we can. And some animals also, like dogs and stuff, they can hear very high pitched sounds. Sounds below 20 hertz are called infrasonic sound or infrasound. Infra means below, right? So infrasonic, sonic refers to the sound, sonic boom jo tha. So infrasonic is below 20 hertz, infrasound is the same thing. Below 20 hertz जो भी frequency का sound होता है, that is called infrasonic sound. So infrasound would include vibrations of a pendulum or vibrations of a bee wings. You cannot hear that. You can hear the purr of a bee wing, that you can hear, but only when it is very close to you. Okay, or only when like if there's a lot of bees around and the sound is amplified, you can hear it. But vibrations of a pendulum you cannot hear. You cannot hear the pendulum going here and there, but it is producing some sound energy that you cannot hear. Okay, or vibrations of a bee wing, they're all infrasounds. Rhinoceroses, for example, can communicate as low as 5 hertz. You will not be able to hear what the rhinoceroses are saying. Of course, you will not understand what they are saying, but you won't even be able to hear the sounds they are making. That is as low as 5 hertz. Unless you have a specialized equipment that can capture that kind of sound, you will not be able to hear it at all. Okay, so in nature, different animals communicate at different ranges in different frequencies, so that each of them can distinguish the other from that frequency. For example, there are whales. Now there is an example of a whale, I think, I don't remember if it was a beluga whale, what kind of whale it was, but there is a whale which is called the loneliest whale on the planet. Why is that? Because it communicates at a different frequency as compared to the rest of the whales, and they do not recognize that frequency. The other whales do not recognize that frequency, therefore that animal is unable to communicate with any other whale. Those whales probably refuse to believe that it is a whale. So just imagine how lonely that whale must be, because it is unable to communicate at the same frequency. If you started speaking, if for example there was a mutation, and if somebody of humans started speaking at, I don't know, 10 hertz, अरे हमें सुनाई नहीं देगा. Of course, now we have all these ears and we have other senses, so we might be able to communicate in a different way. But what about whales and stuff? They can't communicate with their hand gestures and stuff. They cannot communicate with facial features. Right, so that is why this is sound is very important in nature, and they all have a different range of different level frequency at which they a different tone. Remember, the sound of of a similar frequency is tone. So they have a same frequency at which they communicate, right? A range of frequencies. If they don't do that, then they get lost. Then they are unable to do their natural functions and stuff. So that whale is unable to communicate with anybody. It is such a sad thing. Elephants also communicate at um low frequencies. Some animals can sense earthquakes. Now, if you have ever seen anything, documentaries about tsunamis, or if you have ever read anything, you will see that people say that the dogs, if they have pets, the pets get really irritated. They get really restless. Actually, not irritated. They get really restless. They want to go somewhere. They are unable to sit straight, right? So that is because they can sense that infrasound. And a lot of animals, when if you ever read about tsunamis coming, no, you will always read about animals moving to higher ground, because they can hear the earthquake coming. They start moving to higher ground. We are unable to hear that. That is why there was such loss of life and property. But animals are, they can hear that, they know what is going to happen, they move to higher ground, therefore the tsunami can't reach them. So that happens, this has happened a lot of times. Sound greater than 20 kilohertz is called ultrasonic, or ultrasonic sound, or ultrasound. Okay. It is also produced by bats, such as animals such as bats, dolphins, porpoises, even rats. Rats ka screech you can hear, but there are a lot of higher frequency screeches of the rats that you probably can't hear. Okay. Bats, when they are navigating at night, bats um, are known to be blind. I don't know if it is actually that they're completely blind, but they navigate through echolocation. We will talk about echolocation ahead. So they use this sound to move. Dolphins also communicate to each other through ultrasound. Like whales communicate through infrasound, dolphins through ultrasound. Right? They give out these screechy sounds that some of them are in our hearing range, so we can hear them. Some of them are in ultrasound. Porpoises also. What are porpoises? They are also mammals, like dolphins के जैसे mammals होते हैं, and rats. Moths are sensitive to ultrasounds. Now the this is something called, this is a prey predation ka relationship. So what is the bats eat moths. So bat will give ultrasound, and the moth can sense that ultrasound. So the moth knows that the bat is close by. It will be able to escape. So look at how nature works. There's always a balance somewhere. Moths are sensitive to ultrasounds, and they can sense ultrasounds produced by bats, and they can escape. Right? Quite interesting to think about it. Um, we have something called hearing aid, right? When people age, they can gradually lose their hearing, right? So people with hearing loss, even people like who are born with congenital hearing losses, or who have been in some mishap and have lost their hearing, they use something called a hearing aid. What does that do? It is an electronic, not batter operated, but battery operated device. It receives sound from a microphone, converts sound waves to electric signals which are amplified, right? So something similar to what was in the शहनाई वगैरह में जो देखा था, but in a different way. ये they capture sound from here which are amplified, right? These electric signals are converted into electric signals. Those electric signals are amplified by an amplifier, and this speaker converts amplified signal to sound and sent to here for clear hearing. And that amplified जो electric noise signal होता है, that is sent to the ear for clear hearing. Okay, so that is how a hearing aid works. Okay, please remember this range. You can be asked a question about it. So what are the applications of ultrasound? Now we have applications that infrasound is not, I don't know if it is very useful for us, but ultrasound has been very useful for us. So ultrasound can be used to clean parts located in hard to reach places such as spiral tubes, odd shaped parts, electronic components. For example, something that you really can't, like if you have a tube like this, how are you going to clean this? There is no brush that can go inside and clean it. So there is something called ultrasound can clean it. So they put in a cleaning solution, and ultrasonic waves are sent into the solution due to high frequency. Because the frequency is so high, it is very high frequency, then that interacts with the particles in that, the grease dust particles that are attached inside those tubes. They interact with that, and these particles loosen up, right? When they loosen up, then they can be cleaned. Okay, they're also used to detect cracks and flaws in metal blocks. So if they have a metal block like this, or for example metallic components such as used in construction of structures such as buildings, bridges, machines and scientific equipments may have cracks or holes inside the metal blocks which are invisible from outside but may reduce the strength of the structure. So how do you see this? You pass an ultrasound and ultrasonic waves pass through the metal block. Detectors are used to detect the transmitted waves. So there are detectors here which can detect the transmitted waves. Now you know that sound waves move very fast in metal. What happens is when these ultrasonic waves pass, they are detected by these. If there is no obstruction, if there is no flaw in those metal blocks, then they are reached, then they are um, uh, perceived by these detectors without any problem. But if there is a flaw, then they get reflected, right? They get reflected back, and then this detector does not detect any kind of signal, therefore they know that there is a flaw or defect there. Longer wavelength sounds bend around the corners of the defective location, therefore they enter the detectors. If it was longer wavelength, they would have simply bent around it and gone here and there. But it is high frequency, therefore it goes and it comes back. Okay, it gets reflected, and therefore this detector does not get anything, and these do, therefore they know that the flaw is in this one. Okay, that is how ultrasound is applied. So some more applications of ultrasound are ultrasound is used for imaging of internal body organs. You cannot see internal body organs. There have to be some ways in which you do that, right? So the simplest way is to use ultrasound. There are a lot of different scans and a lot of different diagnoses, a lot of different diagnostic techniques or imaging techniques that are used to see the internal bodies, but all are used for different reasons. And right, okay, so the simplest to see the internal organs, just to see if there is something that is uh, the basic structure of the organ, and so ultrasound is used. So ultrasonic waves reflect from various parts of the heart, for example, and form an image of the heart called echocardiography. This can be used to see the structure of the heart, to see if all of these are intact. ये सब है या नहीं है, because you have the right ventricle, right auricle, left ventricle, left auricle, right? So these are all, you can see all of these chambers and all of the, you can see the structure of the heart, and you can see if there's some sort of abnormality or there's some sort of differences in structure. And this is, there is always a standard कि ऐसा standard होता है, इससे कुछ deviation हो, then there is a problem, right? So that is called echocardiography. Then there is an ultrasound scanner which can get images of the internal organs of the human body. This is also sort of like an ultrasound scanner. So, but it is called echocardiography. Imaging of patients' organs such as kidneys, gallbladder, liver, uterus, etc. So normally, if you go and get an ultrasound done, it is done for the entire abdomen. So they look at your entire abdominal area. They see different organs of your body. They see different they see if everything is in the right place, not in the right place, if there's some kind of defect in something, किसी का shape छोटा है ज़्यादा है, या किसी चीज में कुछ growth आ गई है, or there is some sort of a atrophy somewhere, something of that sort. All of these things can be seen from the ultrasound. Detection of abnormalities such as stones in gallbladder, kidney, tumors in different organs. Okay, ultrasonic waves travel through tissues of the body. They get reflected from regions of density difference. No, either bhi dekho, you can see that they get reflected from regions of density difference. यहाँ पे it is higher density, therefore it gets reflected more. Right? Lower density hoga, it passes through it. Therefore, you get a darker area here. Waves are then converted into electrical signals that are used to generate images of the organ. Right? You can see them on the monitor, or they can be printed on film, and this is called film, and this is called ultrasonography. Okay. For example, even for pregnant women and so, it is very common to have ultrasounds, because you can see this is a child that is found inside the mother's womb. You can see that as even as the child is developing, there are differences in the density. You can see there is a spine, you can see this is the jaw, right? So you can see differences in the density where the bone is developing. जहाँ अच्छा development नहीं हो रहा है, then you will be able to see if there is a sort, if there is some by reflection of sound, you can see whether or not it is developing properly, if there is any congenital defects or growth abnormalities. Okay, it may also be used to break small stones formed in the kidney into fine grains, which are then flushed out of urine, um, flushed out by urine. What you can do is, just like we talked about cleaning an apparatus that was of a weird shape, like like a tube, spring tube that we just spoke about in the previous slide. We had said that we can clean it using ultrasonic waves. Similarly, small stones in the kidney may be broken uh, into fine grains, because it passing stones from which are formed in the kidney out of the urine is very painful, so they might be broken down so that they're easily flushed out. Now we come to sonar. What is sonar? Sonar refers to sound, navigation and ranging, right? So SO comes from sound, N comes from navigation and ranging. Okay, so that is used in ships. So sound, navigation and ranging is normally used in ships. It is also used normally by many different, as in the principles involved in this are also used by animals such as bats, right? So it uses ultrasonic waves to measure the distance, direction and speed of underwater objects. Now you have done the same principle by इको का जब आपने पढ़ा था पार्ट 2 में, when we spoke about it, we also solved a couple of questions about how far is this object from the reflecting surface and all. We saw that, we discussed that. This is the same principle, this is the absolutely the same principle, but they are using ultrasonic waves. Okay, the transmitter produces and transmit ultrasonic waves which travel through water. After striking an object on the seabed, they get reflected and are sensed by the detector. The detector converts the ultrasonic waves into electrical signals and these are interpreted. The distance of the object that reflected the sound wave, calculated by the speed of sound in water, and the time interval between the transmission of the reception of ultrasound. Right? The distance of the object is calculated by, यहाँ पे जो distance है, कितना distance है, it is calculated by the speed of sound in water and the time interval between transmission and reception. And you have done this in the previous slide, therefore you know that, you know the formula तो obvious है, distance is equal to speed into time. If time interval between transmission and reception is t, speed of sound in water is v, total distance is 2d. Why is it 2d? We have talked about this. Why have we talked, when we did we talked about this? We talked about this when there was a person who was like shouting or something, and then his voice was getting reflected from a reflective surface. You know that it takes d distance to go to this place, and then d distance back to that observer. So that is why the distance, total distance covered for it to come back to you is 2d. It is the same thing with sonar. So total distance 2d is 2d into is equal to v into t. This method is also called echo ranging. It's called eco-ranging. It's not also called eco-ranging. It is called eco-ranging. And by doing this, they can see a lot of different things, right? It is used to determine depth of the sea, or to locate underwater features or objects such as hills, submarines, icebergs, sunken ships, etc. Right? To see the depth, कि कितनी depth है यहाँ पे. Sometimes the ships, there is a hill that you can't really see underwater, and it might cause damage to the ship also. So you know what the depth is, what the underwater features are, right? If there is a submarine, especially in war वगैरह के time में, if there's like a submarine here, then they can, I can't make a submarine, sorry. So if they this submarine will have its own signatures of how well it reflects the sound, and कैसा होता है, how much it reflects the sound. So they can also detect submarines, they can detect sunken ships. If there's a sunken ship somewhere and they need to find it, nobody's going to go swimming inside. They use something called sonar, right? So this is what the applications of sonar are. There's a question. This is similar to what you have already done in the previous slide. A submarine emits a sonar pulse which returns from an underwater cliff in 1.2 seconds. So there is a submarine. It returns from an underwater cliff. It returns, okay? It returns. So it goes here and it comes back in 1.02 seconds. If the speed of sound in salt water is 1531 meter per second, how far away is the cliff? Now the simple thing is, how far away is it? We know the formula is speed is equal to distance upon time. Distance is equal to speed into time. Now you know that because it is coming back, then distance is 2d. So 2d is equal to 1531 into 1.02. Right? So it is 1531 into 1.02, which is 151, 1561.62. This is 2D. So D is equal to this divided by 2, which is 780.81 meter. Okay, understood? Chalo. This is another solved example. A ship sends out ultrasound that returns from the seabed and is detected after 3.42 seconds. If the speed of ultrasound through seawater is 1531 meter per second, what is the distance of the seabed from the ship? अच्छा, please कभी भूलना मत कि this time is for 2D. If you take it for D, if you take it only for distance, then the answer will be wrong. Okay. The time between transmission and detection means it is going and coming back. So 2D. Or you can also subtract, or you can also divide the time. You can just say that since it is transmitting and detecting in this time, then only transmission उधर तक जाने के लिए it will take half the time. So instead of 3.42 seconds, it will be 1.71 seconds or something of. You can also do that, right? That is also uh, allowed. That is also allowed. But this is the normal formula, so don't इतना complicate मत करो. If it is easier to calculate by the half, agar for example it was detected after 2 seconds, so instead of multiplying by 2, you can just say कि चलो 1 second में वहां तक पहुंचा, so I'll just multiply by 1 and I'll get the distance, but you have to divide only once. Speed of ultrasound in water is v this much, distance is 2 into depth of sea, that is 2d, therefore 2d is equal to this much, and therefore d is equal to this much. Okay. So we come to navigation by animals. I told you about eco-ranging, right? Echolocation. Echolocation is done by bats and other such animals. Bats fly at night and they search for prey. They emit a high-pitched ultrasonic squeak, right? They produce many squeaks, and these squeaks get reflected back to them at different intervals. So they know, अगर एकदम पास में होगा कुछ object, then it gets immediately reflected. तो तब they know that it is very close. They have to navigate like this उसके around. And these small animals, for example, they know कि उतना ही छोटा सा ही part reflect हो रहा है, which means it is a small animal which is moving here and there. Okay, reflected from the prey returns to the bat's ears, and the nature of reflections, nature of the obstacle or prey, what it is like, all of these things are given by the nature of reflection. even not just the prey but also obstacle जो होता है, अगर सामने building आ गई या सामने there is a sort of a rock or a tree, then how does it know? By the nature of reflections. For example, tree है, then what will it be? If it's a tree and if the bat is flying here, if it is a tree, then there are a lot of leaves. So what will happen? It will get reflected from the leaves also. It will get reflected from the trunk also. So the bat knows कि उसको पता है कि ऐसा आया तो फिर ऐसी चीज है. So that is how they do echolocation. Porpoise also use ultrasound. This is a porpoise. Okay. So this is a normal जैसे होता है. This is a bat. This is a porpoise. This is a submarine. So the same principle is used कि यहाँ पे एक sound जाता है. It gets reflected by the obstacle or whatever there is by the prey, and then they know what is in front of it. Okay. Now we come to structure of human ear. So this is the diagram that is given in your book. I think it is absolutely not clear. So I have put another diagram here that you will see now. The outer ear, what you can see, you can't see here because I am wearing headphones, but you can see your own ear, that is called pinna. It is a cartilaginous structure. It collects the sounds from surroundings. It is like this microphone जैसे वो amplifier होता है ना hearing aid में, then it collects all these sounds. So this is the reason the ear is shaped like this. It collects sounds from outside, tries to maximize the collection of sound that is found in nature. The collected sound passes through the auditory canal. This is the auditory canal. Okay. This is a better photograph. So ये pinna है. This is the auditory canal. Right. End of the auditory canal is the thin membrane called eardrum or tympanic membrane. This is called the tympanic membrane, or what we normally call eardrum. Okay. What happens is the sound is moving as compressions and rarefactions, right? So if a compression reaches the eardrum, it moves outside. There's pressure on the outside of the membrane and it forces the eardrum inwards. So it pushes it in this direction, inside, like this. Okay. And if the rarefaction reaches it, then the pressure outside is less than the pressure inside. So therefore it moves outside like this. And it starts vibrating. So this way the eardrum vibrates, and it vibrates according to the pitch you have received or the frequency that has been received or the amplitude that has been received. उसके according वो उतना उसी type में vibrate करने लगेगा. Okay, so because of that the eardrum is perceiving sound exactly like the wave, and these vibrations are amplified several times by three bones of the middle ear. Okay, these three bones are hammer, anvil and stirrup. राइट यहाँ पे आपको दिया हुआ है हैमर, एनविल एंड स्टिरअप. ओके, द नेम्स आर मैलियस, इनकस एंड स्टेप्स, बट उसको आप इधर इन द बुक इट्स गिवन हैमर, एनविल एंड स्टिरअप. नाउ व्हाट इज द थिंग अबाउट स्टेप्स? स्टेप्स इज द स्मॉलेस्ट बोन इन योर बॉडी. व्हाट इज द लार्जेस्ट बोन इन योर बॉडी? इट इज द फीमर, and the smallest bone is stapes or the ear inner bone. It is called the stirrup bone. It is tiny. It is really small. It is maybe smaller than your nail or so. I don't know how exactly big it is, but it is the smallest bone in your body. It is in the inner ear. And what does it do? That what do these three bones? They transmit the amplified pressure variations from the sound wave to the inner ear. What they do is they move according to the vibrations of the eardrum. They're attached to the eardrum or the tympanic membrane. They move according to it and then they transmit it to the inner ear. This is the inner ear here. Okay, the cochlea. In the inner ear, pressure variations are turned into electrical signals by cochlea. Okay, by the cochlea. This is the cochlea. And here the pressure variations are turned into electrical signals, and from the cochlear nerve or the auditory nerve, this goes to the brain. Okay, it is given here for you, cochlea and auditory nerve. Okay, so this cochlear nerve takes the electrical signals to the brain and the brain interprets it as auditory signals. This is the middle ear. I've tried to magnify this. This is the malleus, that is hammer, incus, that is anvil, and stapes, that is stirrup. Okay, so these are the three bones that are found in your middle ear. This is not difficult at all. It just looks very complicated, right? Diagram banana padega, so you just have to make sure you have an auditory canal, you have a tympanic membrane, you give these malleus incanus stapes, then you have a cochlea. A cochlea looks like a, for some reason it looks like a snail, and just make something like this. This is a cochlear nerve, and you have to ensure that you have all the necessary parts properly um, made, and then you have, ठीक है, so you should know कि ये है उसका labeling क्या होना चाहिए. So you have to know these basic things. It is very simple. The sound is collected by the pinna, goes through the auditory canal to the tympanic membrane, where the tympanic membrane starts to vibrate according to the sound, the quality of the sound, the pitch is frequency, or the amplitude and all of that. And that sound, that is the vibration that is received by the tympanic membrane, is transmitted to the malleus incussus stapes. By the malleus incussus stapes, it is amplified to the cochlea, and the cochlea transmits makes it into an electrical signal, which gets transferred to the cochlear nerve to the brain. Now think about it. The brain, what is the brain? The cochlea is doing. Cochlea is taking information about density and pressure gradient and converting into an electrical signal. And what is the brain doing? The brain is taking that electrical signal and it is making that into a proper sound. Think about how complicated the brain is. कितना complicated है ये सब, because simple, what I say and what you hear is the same thing. How is that possible? So think about it. It has to be the same. नहीं तो, that is what language is, right? Because what I speak you hear and you understand. That means whatever sounds I'm making, ये जो sounds what I'm making, these are very random sounds that you're making. But how do you understand? Because your brain knows, your brain has learned that this sound means this. So it interprets that difference in gradient, the difference in the pressure gradient and the whatever that is, and it transfers into an electrical signal, and the brain can interpret ki हाँ ये it's correlated to this alphabet or this word or something. And not just that, not just the language, but also the expression. So if somebody is angry or if somebody is happy, then you can also interpret that. So it is very complicated the way the brain works. It is very interesting, right? So this is basically how the ear works. Okay, so sent to the brain via the auditory nerve, and the brain interprets them as sound. So this is what we have learned. We have in this chapter, the persistence of sound in an auditorium. Okay, this we did in the previous one, right? The persistence of sound in an auditorium is the result of repeated reflections of sound and is called reverberation. The audible range of hearing for average human beings is in the frequency of 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz or 20,000 hertz. The sound waves with frequencies below the audible range are termed infrasonic, and those above the audible range are ultrasonic. We learned about the different applications of ultrasound, so medical and industrial applications, and also used by many animals for echolocation. The sonar technique is used to determine the depth of sea and to locate underwater hills, valleys, submarines, icebergs, sunken ships, etc. The human ear has a pinna, tympanic membrane that vibrates, the middle ear that amplifies the vibrations, and the inner ear that converts the vibrations into electrical signals to the brain via the auditory nerve or the cochlear nerve. Right? You have to remember certain words. You have to remember pinna. You have to remember auditory canal, tympanic membrane, hammer, anvil, stirrup, or malleus incans stapes if you are that interested in medical terms, and the cochlea and cochlear nerve. Right? These things, or the auditory nerve. These six things you have to remember in your about your ear. Okay. So please watch part 4 for questions and numericals that are given at the back of your book. I will meet you. So I hope this is clear for you. I hope you have understood part 3. If you have not, just go through it once more. You can just watch this video as many times as you want. And please watch part 4 for the questions. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Please share it with your friends. Please subscribe to our channel and please press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new videos. Okay. So for now, I bid you goodbye. I'll see you in part 4 where we do step by step numericals and questions. Okay, bye.